Okay, cinematics and Stutan Kotakitope. Hello, students. My name is Otakitope. Antoxistiko. Aktepoyop. Plurals. Today we're going to talk about plurals in Blackfeet. So I'll share my screen. Okay. Blackfeet language. Nitsi boxen with Otakitope. Nistu. Lesson number 6, plurals. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to pluralize nouns, and just by looking at the plural and singular forms of animate and inanimate nouns. So first of all, with the singular form of the animate, you take the main word and then you add a silent slash voiceless wah at the end. And it isn't necessarily pronounced wah, it's more of like a wah. For instance, in the word ninna, which means man, the singular form would be ninna. Ninna. We've talked about this sound before. You don't really make it by using your breath. You just move your lips at the end of the word. Ninna. Ninna. So as you could see, I'm kind of just whispering it, and then really I'm just opening my mouth and letting a little bit of air flow out, but not as much as I would when I'm regularly speaking. So yeah, the singular form of ninna, which means ma'am, is ninna. But since this is voiceless, often it is silent, and it is often dropped by some speakers, even native speakers. And in some dialects, you don't really even say it. You kind of just drop it. So because of that, ninna in itself could just be the singular form. And to pluralize this, you drop the wa and you add an x at the end. And the reason that this I is in parentheses because sometimes it gets dropped, but really it's pretty much always there. So for instance, you take the word ninna, the root for man, and then you add this x at the end, and it becomes ninnex, ninnex, ninnex. You see the a at the end changes from an a with the stabs at top, which is pronounced ah, and it becomes ai, which is pronounced a. So you don't pronounce it ninnax, you say ninnex, ninnex, ninnex. So whenever there's an a at the end of your word and you're making it plural, you don't want to you want to change it a little bit. You don't want to say it exactly how the root is and then add x. You want to change it so that it flows better, because ninnax is not how you'd say it. You'd say ninnex, ninnex. Let's have another example. For instance, another word that ends with an ah, imita, imita, which is dog. The singular form is imitao, 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 or just imita. Really depends on the speaker. But when you want to pluralize this, again, you add an x to it. So you go from imitao to imitates, imitates. And remember, when you're pluralizing it, you are changing this. And so when a word ends with an ah, it becomes a at the end. From imita to imitate. So we have imita, 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 which is dog, to imitate, imitates, imitates, which is dogs. And then if it ends with a e sound, this is how you will do it. So the singular form of the word Okii, which is the root for woman, Okii, Okii is Okii, Okii. And you can think of this singular form, wa, as kind of like even like an article. So you have Okii, which is woman, and Okii, which is kind of like saying a woman. Okii, woman, Okii, a woman. And it goes for the other ones. Imeda, dog, imeda, a dog. Ninna, man, ninna, a man. So that's how you could think of it. Okay. And when you're pluralizing this, the E sound meshes with the X here. You're not saying Okii, you're just meshing the E sounds together to just get Okii, Okii. So Okii, Okii, or even Okii, Okii, Okii. Because sometimes people won't pronounce this as a wa, but rather like a yo or you. Okii, Okii. Versus geeks, women. Geeks, geeks. Next up, we have the word for boy, which also ends with an E sound. Sachkumape, sachkumape, sachkumape. That's the root for the word boy. When you want to make it a singular boy, as in just one boy, you say sachkumape, sachkumape, sachkumape. And then when you want to make it several boys or boys in general, you take sachkumapi and turn it into sachkumapikse, 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 sachkumapikse. Okay. And then but when the noun ends with a consonant, it's a little bit different. And generally, it won't be too hard, but there are certain cases where it is more difficult. And really, it's only with words that end with an N. So we take akikoan, 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 which means girl, akikoan. And then the singular form, which is just like one girl would be akikwan, akikwan, akikwan. And you could already see how it's different. You're not saying akikwanwa, you're not saying akikwanwa or akikwanyo. You're cutting off this wa and just adding the and just saying akikwan, akikwan, akikwan. Kind of like a whispered ha. It's kind of like you're saying ha, but more whispered. Akikwan. But when you're wanting to pluralize this, you don't say akikwanix. You don't take akikwan and do akikwanix like you might think, considering how we've been doing it. Just like you don't take ninna and make it ninna, ninnaix when you're making man into men. You don't take akikwan until you turn it into akikwanix when you're making girl into girls. What you do is you cut off the end and then pretend it's not there. So really, you're not dealing with akikwan, you're dealing with like akikwa. And as we've already seen, you take the A with the stabs on top and just turn it into normal AI, which is pronounced A. And so akikwan goes from akikwix, akikwix, akikwix. And it may seem difficult, but there's really not many nouns, especially animate nouns that end with an N. This is one of the only ones. Akikwan to akikwix. Okay. And then another one that ends with a consonant. Buas, 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 which is a cat. Buas. And again, you just take off this W because you're dealing with a consonant, not a vowel. You're not saying buaswa. You're saying buasa, bosa, bosa. So when you're talking about one cat, you say bosa, bosa. And then we take the root for cat, bos, and bosix, when we're talking about more than one cat. Bosix, bosix, bos into bosix. So pretty simple, with the all the nouns that end with the consonant, you generally just add this x to the at the end, bosix. It's really turning akikon into akikwex instead of akikwanix is really kind of an exception to how plurals are formed in Blackfeet. Yeah. Now let's look at inanimate. So again, you have a silent / voiceless sound at the end of the words. And this time, instead of a wah, we have a yi, or more so like a yi, yi. So let's look at the word for cup. Goats, 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 goats. When you want to talk about like one cup, the singular cup, you say gose, gose, gose. Again, you cut out this consonant, the y, because two consonants really can't be next to each other. S and y really don't pair up well. You're not saying gosi. That doesn't really sound like a Blackfeet word. So you cut out that wa, that ya sound, and add this it. Gos, gos, gos. But again, since this e can also be silent, you could also just say the root, and that will be the singular form. Gos, gos. It all depends on the dialect. More often you'll hear gos in like a bigani more than you would in, for instance, Ghana. Yeah. And then to pluralize something with the inanimate objects, it's similar to animate, except you have ist, ist, ist. So for instance, goats, the root for cup, turns into goatsist, 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 to cups, goatsist. But they're let's keep looking. Mistaki, mistaki, which means mountain. When you want to talk about one mountain, you could say mistaki, mistaki, mistaki. Or you could just say mistaki, but either one, mistaki or mistaki. And then when you want to pluralize it, it's pretty simple. Take mistaki to mistakist, mistakist, mistakist. And you really just combining this with these with this e sound. Mistakist, mistakist. And sometimes people do kind of pronounce it as mistakiist, but either way, you could get away with both. Mistakist versus mistakist, mistakist. Then let's look at one that ends with an ah sound. Let's take the word nidachta, which is the root for river. Nidachta, nidachta, nidachta. And let me pause a minute to kind of help with this, because it's can be a little bit challenging. So once you hit the back of your teeth with your tongue to get da, you kind of go to the back of your throat and let out ha, ha. And if you can't do that, you can let out just a breath, ha, ha, just like a normal English H. And then you go back to your teeth to make this da sound. So it is pronounced ni da. But if you can't, it is understandable if, as you're starting out, you can't make all of these sounds, especially like ni da. You could also say ni da, ni da. Nitachta. Nitachta. It's the word for river. To make the singular, you say nitachtai, nitachtai, nitachtai. And when this yi, the singular yi, comes after an ah sound, often you could say ah yi, nitachtai, but to shorten the pronunciation, you can also just shorten it to like an I sound, like literally the sound I. Just say nitachtai, nitachtai, nitachtai. So either one, you could say nitachtai or you could say nitachtai. Pretty much the same thing. And then when you're making it plural, it's the same thing that we've seen before. You know, you take this ah and make it into a. Nitachta into nitachteist for rivers. Nitachteist, nitachteist, nitachteist. Now let's look at one that ends with an N again. It ibochsen, ibochsen, ibochsen. You might recognize this word from Nitsi-bochsen, which means Blackfeet, the Blackfeet language. Nitsi-bochsen. So ibochsen kind of means like the talk, and that can either mean a word or language or a sentence even. But yeah, ibochsen means a language or a sentence or a word, just kind of the noun of talking. That makes sense. Ibochsen, language. Ibochsen, ibochsen. Again, since it ends with a consonant, you cut out the y when you're making it into the singular form, and so it becomes ibochsen, 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 ibochsen. And when you're pluralizing it, again, you don't want to say ibochsenist. You could get away with it. Occasionally, I will hear ibochsenist when people want to pluralize ibochsen. But generally, when you're pluralizing ibochsen language into languages, you cut out the end, or the ends rather, and then just add the ists right on. And so ibochsen becomes ibochsist, ibochsist, ibochsist. So ibochsen, the root for language, to ibochsist, languages, or even words. And sometimes I'll hear ibochsist kind of be used to talk about sentence, which, as you know, is a collection of words. So ibochsist. Let's take another one that ends with the consonant. Sobatsis, 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 which is a chair. When you're making it singular, again, you add on that ye, but you cut off that y because consonant. So you get sobatsisi, 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 sobatsisi. To get kind of like one chair, sobatsisi, or a chair if you want to. Sobatsisi. But this is kind of when it gets a little bit complicated. So when you want to pluralize sobatsis, you don't add on another ists. You don't say sobatsisists. That'd be really wordy. You just say sobatsists. And there's a couple different ways that you could look at this or make sense of this. So as you could see, the last the kind of syllable of this word sobatsis is is. And as you could see, it's also coincides with the first kind of syllable, or not syllable, but the first couple sounds of the plural, which is ists. And so you could look at it as they're just combining, because in Blackfeet or Blackfoot, you want to make the word kind of as short as you can. And so that's why you would say sobatsists instead of sobatsisists, because you're kind of using this is from sobatsis and then the is from the kind of pluralizer. and just combining them, making them the same sound. Sobatsists. But there's another way you could look at it. Like I said, this I can be omitted sometimes, and you could look at this as one of the cases that it's omitted. And so you're just adding like an extra STS to sobatsis, to turn sobatsis into sobatsists. But either way, yeah, sobatsists. That's how you do plural. Make it plural. Let's look at another example. Mistis. Mistis is the word for tree or even a stick. Mistis, or just wood. Mistis. To make the singular, you add on the ye, cut out the y. Mistissi. 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 And then if we take the root, mistis, which is a tree, and kind of the same logic that we applied in making the plural of chair, then it's the same thing. Mistist, mistist, mistist. So you don't say misticists, you say mistist. And if you're having trouble kind of thinking of when to apply this, just look at whenever the word or the inanimate word ends with is, that's when you just add a TS, if you want to look at it like that way. But yeah, mistis to mistist. Well, that's the end of the plural and singular lesson. So I'll see you guys all later.